Budgeting is a very critical part of the whole process of strategy implementation. Budgeting is essentially a process, as we saw in one of the earlier sessions, where we convert objectives into financial terms, and we can convert resource allocation also into financial terms. Now, budgets are important, budgets are essential. However, budgets have certain problems, and when we resort to budgeting to ensure performance analysis, we need to keep these problems in mind, and we need to really work around them. One issue really is that the budgets are traditionally based on departments. See, the budget historically has evolved on the basis of departments. There is a certain budget for the marketing department. There is a certain budget for the manufacturing department. There is a certain budget for the HR department. So that's the way budgeting has evolved. Budgeting has evolved in terms of looking at departments, and therefore budgeting has continued that way. However, the operations of the company has changed. The operations of the company has changed as the broader outside environment has changed. Today, the company operates on the basis of processes. Processes are broader areas of activity, not confined to one particular department. Now, for instance, if you want to improve the quality of a product, right? Now, improving quality is a process. Improved quality is a process. This process is not restricted to the manufacturing department. It is really spread across several departments. The marketing department is involved because unless feedback from the customer is adequate, unless feedback from the customer is quick, the design department cannot determine what is it which is important to the customer, and therefore what is it that they must lay emphasis on. See, quality is a very broad term, but in order to operationalize it, we need to know which aspect of quality is important to the customer, and that is something which the marketing department is responsible for. Now, once the marketing inputs have come into the design department, then what the design department does with those inputs is another issue, right? That's another issue which determines the efficacy of that whole process of quality improvement. Does the design department act quickly? Does the design department look at other areas where similar products are bought by customers? Do they look at what the customers consider to be important in those other areas where similar products are bought? Or do they look at what customers in different areas who buy the same product as this, what do they look at when it comes to quality, right? So all these factors are important from the point of view of the design department. And then you have the manufacturing department. Let's say the design department has using inputs from marketing and using other external as well as internal inputs. The design department has changed the design of the product to ensure better quality and passed it on to the manufacturing department. Now, the manufacturing department, what does it do with these inputs? What does it do with the new design, right? How are they able to alter the manufacturing process to ensure that the new design parameters are translated into practice in an efficient manner, right? This is the impact of manufacturing on quality. So, improving quality is a process. Improving quality involves marketing, design and manufacturing. But the budget will not talk in terms of allocating a certain sum to the process of improving quality. Budgets typically will say, let us allocate this sum to marketing, let us allocate this sum to design, and let's allocate this sum to manufacturing. So, allocations are discrete. However, the process is one. It's one uniform, one single process which overlaps different departments. This is one issue in budgeting that needs to be resolved to ensure that budgeting can actually improve performance at the ground level. Another issue in budgeting is that, again for historical reasons, budgeting has always been incremental. See, when companies started off, when a company starts off, there is a constraint in resources, right? Because there is a constraint in resources, the company says that let us allocate so much to each department. Now, as the years go by, resource constraints come down and the company decides to therefore increase allocation to various departments by certain percentage. Let's say it increases it by 15% in a particular year, maybe by 5% in another year, maybe by 20% in the third year, right? So, the reason why this happens is because the total resources available with the company have gone up, and the company therefore decides to increase resource allocation to departments, which is incremental for historical reasons. However, in a rapidly changing environment, it's important to see whether a particular department requires that absolute sum of money which is being allocated to it. For instance, you might have a publicity department. The company has a publicity department. Now, because of changes in the company's overall strategy, the company has become a supplier to a single customer, to a single large customer. The company originally supplied to, let us say, 20 different customers. However, as a matter of corporate strategy, the company has over the years become a single buyer, a supplier to one single customer. In this case, does the publicity department have the same importance that it did in the early days? No. You don't really require much publicity at all because it's a single buyer situation, right? Okay. What would happen in the incremental approach is that every year the money that's allocated to publicity would keep increasing in tandem with the increase in marketing or increase in operations. However, the activity of publicity in relation to the overall strategic target has not been going up, right? So this is a mismatch. Therefore, budgets should not be incremental, but budgets should be zero base. That is, every department every year should justify why it requires the allocation of a certain sum of money. It cannot say that last year I got X and therefore this year I must get X plus 10%. Rather, it must say that X plus 10% is the total sum of money which I am going to get this year. How am I going to spend that money? That is how it must justify the budget. So, zero-based budgeting instead of incremental budgeting. That's another issue with budgets which needs to be resolved. It needs to be resolved to make the budget an effective instrument of affecting performance. The third issue is that in budgets, the financial year is really a very arbitrary period. Again, for historical reasons, you need to determine the budget for a certain period. Since tax payments are on the basis of the financial year, therefore budgeting was done on the basis of the financial year. But several processes are not restricted to a financial year. They stretch over 2, 3, 4, 5 financial years. Therefore, a budget, when it's a process-oriented budget, then restricting that budget to a financial year is very, very arbitrary. It actually cuts at the very root of performance appraisal. This is another issue in budgeting that needs to be looked at. Let's see what this gentleman has to say on the issue of budgets.
Now, budgets, something of which we are all familiar as finance folks, are necessary to ensure that the new programs are indeed adding shareholder value. And this is the last formal check to ensure that the strategy is both feasible and practical. Detailed implementation programs and costing may invalidate a strategic decision. And budgets are the financial bridge between the strategic plan and the annual operating plan.